Boom. And just like that, friends, Kyrie Irving stepped back out on the court as we get set for one heck of an episode. The return of the big three, the return of the scary hours, the return of one of the most dynamic on-ball playmakers that the NBA has ever seen. We get into his game, his impact, and ultimately a really nice win on the road against the Indiana Pacers, Doug.
Oh, baby, scary hours. This was an awesome one. It didn't look good in the first half. It looked
Neither
as
here nor
bad as
there.
humanly possible. I forgot about it instantly when we got to that midway through the third quarter and into the fourth quarter because that was everything you wanted to see from this team. We are going to break it all down. But first, the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo.
Oh, yes, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I am Adam Marbrecht. He is Doug Norrie, and this is the return of Kyrie Irving. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We're free on all those great platforms. Comeback completed, victory on the road. Kyrie Irving, Doug, is back on the court. We're going to talk about the comeback. We're going to talk about the key players, but Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, dude, this is everything you wanted it to be, right? It was just the return. He was in his bag right away. It felt like maybe he had to shake off a few cobwebs when it came to gameplay and sort of speed
0-3
of
to
the game.
start, but he got past that.
Well, it didn't take him long because it took him less than a game to look like he had never left, dude. 206 days since he last played a basketball game, and that was obviously in that game against the Bucks when he twisted his ankle. So you look at like 2/3 of a year, well, a little bit less than that, of sitting out from playing basketball, stepping right back in on the road. The spotlight is really shining on him right now because this is a somewhat controversial return for the player that's under the microscope. And with all Nets on a 3-game losing streak, like there's a lot going on here that could have, and it frankly looked like it was going to turn out really bad. And it's just like such a reminder of just what, I don't even want to call it an X factor because he's just too good for that, but like what it means to have him on the team. Like when you build a team, when the whole plan was to have these three guys playing together, this was a reminder of how good it can be when they're really, really dialed in. And it's just awesome. I'm so glad he's back. I wish it was for every single game because they could really use it. But this was, considering the final outcome here, this is about as good as you could expect of return for a guy that hasn't played in a really long time.
Thing of beauty, man. Ends up playing 32 minutes, 22 points on 9 of 17. Really a really nice stat line in his returning game with 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, a block. Like he showed all of the facets of his game that are so valuable to any team, but let alone the Brooklyn Nets. And, if I want to pick out just a moment, we're going to talk about his impact on the game and really on the team overall and reminding ourselves about how much better everyone gets to play when he's on the court along with Durant and with Harden. But he hits the buzzer beater at the end of the third quarter and does a double fist pump in the middle of the lane. Like you talk about coming back and being away and everything that's gone on. You could, we've said this about Kevin Durant sometimes. We've said this about James Harden, a lot of players, but there was clearly an emotional component to this for Kyrie of just being effing excited to be playing basketball again and to be hitting shots when they matter in games that are meaningful and being a big part of Brooklyn Nets basketball again. It was absolutely fantastic. There's nothing about what Kyrie did tonight that shouldn't make you absolutely elated as a Nets fan.
Oh, and he said as much in the post game. He was with Michael Grady on Yes in the post game, just talking about how excited he was. Gave his jersey to his dad. His dad was at the game in Indiana. Clearly an emotional guy, like an emotional game. We know Kyrie's like a somewhat emotional guy that sometimes is like something of a downfall for him. I think at times, but that's just who he is. So whatever, that's what you're getting at this point. And what you're also getting is just an absolute artist on the basketball court. I don't really know another way to put it. Like what this guy can do with the ball, the way he really punishes defenses, the way he can finish over bigger guys in traffic, the way he can stop and accelerate and slow down to be able to finish over guys like Sabonis. He did it once, just over dudes that are just way bigger than him. The body control. It's just, I can go on for like 10 minutes about just the superlatives around his game. And it had been so long. Like I said, it's over 200 days. It's been so long that you can kind of forget. Yeah, you watch some highlights and you see, you know what it's like. And we've all watched them for tons and tons of games. But to watch it again live and just in the moment and see what he's able to do, I'm really not saying, when I say he's an artist and a wizard, like that's not hyperbole. I'm not just using these words like because it's like a hot take or whatever. It's like trying to make it sound good. Like that's just actually what it is. Like it is, like he can do things with the basketball that like almost nobody else in the history of basketball can do. Like the list is so short around guys that can do the on-ball stuff that he can do.
Stylistically, right? His play is so pretty to watch. And this goes back to what I was saying about his passing, right? We're going to get the impact here, but last episode about getting back his passing, his court vision. And it's not just the things that he does, it's the way in which that he does it. And we've had this happen before around big games from Kevin Durant or Harden, etc., where we feel like we end up gushing over something. But to your point, man, cast your mind back to last season when he had some time away from the team. And it was always that thing you talk about, the topic around it, what's going on, etc. But when he gets back on the court and you watch him play, you're reminded of what a truly unique talent he is.
Yeah, look, he instantly enters the game. Their spacing looks better within the first 1 second of the game because you can no longer just sag off one of the non-shooters that's on the court. I mean, you can't do that as much with Patty Mills, but there's an extra layer of needing to be in his hip pocket with Kyrie too, because he will blow by you also. So you just can't, like he has just had this, there's like this part of his game that's different than Patty Mills in that he can blow by you on the dribble. He can blow by you and then stop and pull up in the mid-range on the dribble that Patty Mills can't do. So there's this whole extra layer of his game that is just that makes it so dynamic on offense. And you could just see it right from the beginning. Their Nets problems really weren't on offense in the first half. They were it was mostly defensive problems that they had in the first half. That was like letting the game get away from them. But the instance, like kind of the way things instantly shifted with it having back. It was what we knew. It's what we talked about for like the last 3 podcasts about the spacing issues and what was going on with this team, why we were concerned. And most of what we said was, hey, guess what? Most of this will be cured the second this guy steps on the court. Like most 100%. Of that stuff, most of those problems and that offensive stagnation and this sort of like going through the motions and looking like there's no room to operate and all that stuff is pretty much instantly solved the second that they announce his name as a starter and he walks onto the court for the tip. Like that. And sometimes it's just that easy because when you have a superstar, they just change the landscape and the dynamic, and it has such a cascading effect all the way down the lineup too, because now everyone else goes back to where they originally were intended to play, just in terms of the rotational hierarchy. And like, I just can't, it's not a loss for words here, but it's just like, there's almost too many superlatives to put into action here about what he brings to the team when he's there. And I'm just all the way here for it. So I'm already just kind of pissed that he can't play Barclays.
And also, I have to now remember there's a whole bunch of games on the schedule where he won't be on the court. We're going to get into one of the biggest benefactors of Kyrie being on the court, how the Nets were capable of completing a comeback against a team that you shouldn't have been behind to begin with, but that's neither here nor there. Before we do, though, Doug, tell the people about Shopify.
Oh, cha-ching, baby. You love that sound. It's the sound of another sale on Shopify. It's the all-in-one commerce platform, so you can start, run, and grow your business. Look, it doesn't really matter where you are in terms of sort of where you are in the business life cycle here. Shopify can really help anybody, whether you're just starting out, whether you're sort of midway through your run, or whether you're already at some sort of enterprise level. Shopify has you covered across all parts of your business, especially when you're scaling. They're going to help you along the way. Shopify powers millions of businesses from first sale to full scale. The testimonials are just kind of through the roof and out the door with Shopify. They've helped millions of customers and millions of businesses at this point. You can reach customers online across social networks. They have a growing suite of channel integrations. If you don't know what that means, it means just you can hook up a lot of stuff to Shopify. You can hook up Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and more to make sure you're covering all of your social networking bases. It's more than a store. Shopify will grow with you. This is the possibility. It's powered by Shopify. Go to Shopify shopify.com/locked-on-NBA. Make sure it's all lowercase for a free 14-day, that's almost half a month, free trial to get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/locked-on-NBA right now. Shopify.com/locked-on-NBA.
So the one thing before we get into the comeback and the players that really thrived off of this and some of the changes, including, by the way, I will just footnote, people say Steve Nash won't try anything. Put David Duke Jr. right into the starting lineup tonight. How do you like that? Just mixing it up. And that didn't pan out, and he made a switch, mixing it up again. But which I thought really just I was shocked by that, and I felt sad for David Duke Jr. You really put him in a bad spot there. But additionally, the last thing I'll say about Kyrie specifically in his game, they very clearly wanted to get him a couple of touches early. First few shots barely grazed front rim. You can tell just getting his legs underneath him, etc. We said this going back to last year, and we always think, the best players in the league are always judged on what their offensive game is. It's what the league is. And the defensive piece is kind of this thing where you say, high energy, high effort, that's great. But I really thought that in those first couple of shots when those looks weren't going, he was active defensively, dove out of bounds on the defensive end, saving a ball in the first half, got into the passing lane on a pass from Sabonis, went the other way. Like, I thought that the spark, the beginning of him feeling comfortable again, actually came on the defensive end. And that's a really easy spot to just go high effort, high energy, and start to get yourself into a rhythm. So I just thought worth mentioning that because he looked good there for whatever your expectations are on that end, which don't need to be high given who he is.
He's always been a pretty active defender. He's got really active hands. He plays a little bit bigger than his size. He's not a good defender, but it's mostly just because he's small and can just be overpowered. It's really never been lack of effort for him. He gets a lot of steals. Like I said, he has really active hands, and he's very quick, and he has really good instincts in there. It's just that he's just sort of at a disadvantage because he's pretty small at this point. So, but he's never been like a massive minus on the defensive end. It's just that he's just a pretty small, slight dude. But I think it was clear that he wanted to kind of bring it from both ends of the court.
Speaking of not being a minus on the court, massively net positive on the court was one DeAndre Bembry, because you talk about the impact of Kyrie Irving, the spacing. Bembry's a guy who we've already been saying all year long, right? Not only the upside on the defensive end, uses his length successfully as well, but you get this benefit of a guy that's a really good slasher and understands where to fill spaces. And you talk about these guys, these role players. Well, DeAndre Bembry looks like he's going to thrive, as anyone almost can around these three superstars, but specifically with Kyrie Irving on the court. You just saw how it opened it up. And by the way, that's not to diminish the fact that DeAndre Bembry did plenty of things unrelated to Kyrie Irving. His effort and energy defensively is the massive part that started to swing this tide and help the Nets get back in front of, again, a very bad Pacers team.
Yeah, so Bembry checks in at the 8:01 mark of the third quarter. The Nets are down 17 at this point. It looks like we're trending toward all hope is lost territory. I'm very pissed off because I had what I wanted to talk about pretty much queued up for this game, and it's looking like it's going to slip away in what would have been a very embarrassing loss for the Nets. Though it's a road game, this is a completely undermanned Pacers team. No Brogdon, no LeVert. No TJ McConnell you want to throw in these guys. So basically their backcourt is dudes that were not playing at the beginning of the season. They're getting smoked in the third quarter. Bembry comes in, and basically that was the end of the game for the Pacers. Like from that point on. Now, a lot of other things happened, but in that time, Bembry plays 20 minutes. He's a plus 24. They overtake them and then end up winning going away. And it was a complete X factor move. You want to say Nash? It's like funny because he's like, is Nash a bad coach for not playing him the whole game or a good coach for making the adjustment? I kept going back and forth on this one the whole game because it's like, well, it's a great adjustment to kind of put him in as a Hail Mary. You can make the case that he should have started, but whatever. He was so active. He was like, he actually made things on their switches. They made things really hard for Sabonis, who was really kind of ruined them the whole game, but they ended up shooting enough gaps in the lane that made it hard for him. He was a big piece of that. His on-ball stuff was really good. And he actually was able to, he was so active defensively that those lineups, they were able to run KD at the 5 because they needed so much offense at that point that they ran KD at the 5, not to close it out at the end, but for a long stretch there in the third and fourth quarter, that's what they were running because they just needed all the offense they could get.
Yep.
And Bembry's defensive effort was a massive piece of that. And he'll just definitely start next game or the next game on the road because that lineup was just too good. Like him being on the court was too good to not have it do it. But man, what an effort. It really was the switch that they needed. Kyrie was also amazing down the stretch, but they played that game like it was a playoff game at the end because they just clearly did not want to lose. And Bembry was just a massive part of it.
Yeah, and it's important, right? Where these pieces start to fit in. Remember, coming into this game, so we wondered it, and you got some of that result. Patty Mills back into the second unit, right? LaMarcus Aldridge in that second unit with him. So the big impact here, and we know it's going to be home and away, so it's going to be fluid, but you can see the benefit to all of the role players in behind Kyrie and Kevin Durant and James Harden. And then listen, I'll touch on Nash here for a second. I think why not? You throw David Duke out there. He's a defensive-minded player. He's young. You give him a shot. He's been a surprising player for the Nets this year. The reason why, and listen, we got a lot of comments about Nash after that last podcast, but the reason why I give this leeway, or I feel like I have some level of understanding around what Nash is doing, is because he's still got Blake Griffin minutes. Like, I just think that Steve Nash is balancing a lot of stuff when you look at this roster and who gets minutes when and managing the egos of it. And I think that that's as much a part of what he needs to accomplish over the course of these meaningless quote unquote games throughout the season for when it matters most, because in the most crucial of games, I don't think Blake Griffin's going to sniff the court. In the most crucial of games, I think DeAndre Bembry automatically would be starting, right? So like to go too much into the details on that piece of it would be losing the forest for the trees. And specifically inside of this game, that's exactly what you wanted to see from Bembry. Show that you can step onto the court for the first time with Kyrie Irving and instinctually have a familiarity, a connection, and understanding. Something that he's shown with the other guys as well. But now you can understand how valuable he can be. And this is also how you start to formulate these rosters and rotations for road games and home games. Bembry, you may be exponentially more valuable on these road games when we have Kyrie. How do we balance that going the other way when we're back at home? So it was a really good game from him and also a really good sample size about what the Nets can do going forward.
And I apologize. They did close to that lineup. They Claxton played in between that group, and he was out there for like the end of the third quarter into the fourth quarter, but then they ended up.
And then he got his fifth foul. Yeah.
Yeah. But then and then he never came back. And actually, I was kind of lobbying in my mind for him to keep playing through that foul because I thought he was really good in his minutes. He had an unbelievable. This is Claxton closeout block on the corner three for Holiday, and then went right back down and got an and one on the other end on a hustle between two guys rebound. So Claxton, for his part, I thought was really good too. He kind of just went out because of the foul, and then they never really needed to bring him back in. So I think in general, like I have to agree with probably a lot of those moves just because. That's just the way I think that things just sort of tip the scales that way. But in general, you just see how much more complete the team is when all these pieces are sort of fitting together. And I think that's the really, really encouraging sign is that when you have just another top tier, top whatever, 15, 10, whatever you want, where you want to put Kyrie talent on the table, it just makes it so that not everyone else can stick in their lane a little bit more. Right? Like if you are a role player, you can just stay so much more in your lane because you are not, and I mean your skill lane at this point. Because you're just not going to be asked to do as much, or you're just going to be asked to just do the right thing and play hard. and sometimes that can make for a lot of these guys life really, really easy on the basketball court, and it's why they can look really good because you're just not asked to play above your head, like above your pay grade, basically. And I think that's what some of these guys have been needing to do in the short term between COVID, between injuries, between not having Kyrie, all this other stuff. And they're just no longer like when it's all clicking, they don't have to do it anymore. And now all of a sudden it just looks like they're shot out of a cannon in other spots.
Let's keep the good times rolling here right after I let the people know about BetOnline because they would like to wish you a happy new betting year. That's right, friends. They continue their march towards the playoffs across the sports landscapes. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. That's the year that we're in now. It's a new year and new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up for today, where you can receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON to get started. 50% welcome bonus when you sign up. First deposit, Locked On promo code from football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. You mentioned this, so I want to touch on it briefly too. When you think about Patty Mills getting back into the second unit, and we've talked about the fatigue factor for him, and he's kind of just having a ho-hum night, and it's not really going so good. The good thing that I really think is that the Brooklyn Nets benefit by getting to say, Patty Mills, now that you're out of the starting unit, like, guess what? Patty Mills played 35 minutes, was 2 of 6, 2 3-pointers, and he hit them at some pretty important moments. And that's awesome. Now, will Patty Mills have bigger, better games? Of course he will. Will he shoot more? Yes. Will he do more at home? Of course he will. But if all Patty Mills is required to do is fill a minute chunk and hit a couple of timely 3-pointers, then that's more than enough. That you've solved your role when Kyrie is available. And to your point about being able to stay in your lane, the bar is much higher than the results you got from Patty Mills in this one. And yet, you can afford to have these quieter performances where he's only getting 6 attempts a game. And usually he's going to do enough in there to be a contributor and have an impact, which you dove in on a little bit deeper in talking of beyond the arc opportunities.
Yeah, like, so in a situation where, so when they run this lineup, right, and it's Mills, like I said, that closing lineup is Harden, Kyrie, Patty Mills, DeAndre Bembry, and Kevin Durant. That lineup, what you're asking from that lineup is just be active enough on defense against like a weaker team and take away the cutting lanes, which they were doing against Sabonis, because Sabonis killed them by having a lot of size inside, but also finding a lot of cutters, like kind of looking over the defense and being able to find open guys. Like, if he was really kind of killing them. You're asking that group to just be enough on defense against the team, because what you're going to do is just run absolutely roughshod on offense, because like that group is so unstoppable. We already knew the Harden, KD, Kyrie threesome or trio was so awesome on offense.
I prefer threesome.
There you go. You can give away a lot on defense because you're just going to be so impossible to stop on offense.
Yeah.
Like I said, 129 points. They hit 5 threes. That, find me another team in the NBA that can do that. That can hit that few 3-pointers and put up that many points. The list is really short. Now, you want to say it's a problem they don't take enough threes? I can definitely be here for that. But you can't argue with these results. 130 points to hit 5 3-pointers in the modern NBA. That means you are making everything in the mid range. It means you're getting to the line. It means you're getting out in transition. That's another thing. Kyrie totally pushes the pace with this team because he's one of the best transition players ever. And they just adds this totally new dynamic. Like, this is not a team that's been wanting to play like as fast at times, I don't think. But Kyrie just ups the tempo so much because in the open court, in transition, he's nearly unstoppable. So you want to push the pace all the time with him. And that's how you're going to score a lot of points, even though you're not bombing from beyond the arc. And there's so few teams that can do that.
Yeah, I really, it's great that you brought it up, because I mentioned it last episode, just about what Kyrie brings to the table, the difference, but being a ball handler, right? When you talk about who's going to be running the offense and bringing the ball up the court, well, you have James Harden. Kevin Durant can get the ball and do whatever he wants with it if you so choose. And then what? Patty Mills, and he's clearly a facilitator of the offense. He's not going to be an executor, one that's going to put pressure on defenses with consistency. What Kyrie Irving is capable of doing in transition is an absolutely different dynamic to anything that they've been able to present. As good as Harden is, it's a different style. It's a different pace that he works with. Like you said, when you get out in transition, James Harden can go coast to coast and he can put pressure on the defense and go at the rack, but not at the pace that Kyrie can. And not in the way that he can when you talk about finishing around the rim at times too, because I mentioned this the other day, the difference between if James Harden is going to put pressure on you and go body to body and try to draw that foul and get at the rim versus Kyrie Irving already being a step past you. He's already going to the bucket. And it's just a matter of if you're going to bother trying to foul him versus giving it up and just admitting that you've already been defeated. So that was a really huge part that I took away from this game.
And he's also gonna, and Kyrie's also gonna not just like get past you. He's gonna stop. He's gonna hang in the air for a second longer. He's gonna switch hands.
Body control.
He's totally ambidextrous when it comes to finishing at the rim with both hands. Like, he's just gonna do things that are gonna make it impossible, because he's so good. If you watch it, he's so good at recognizing the thing you did defensively with your body and just doing some counter move that ends up putting the ball up in a place where you were not. Like he kind of like waits for you to decide where you're going to go. I'm putting my hand up if you're watching on YouTube. Like he's kind of waits for you to decide where you're going to go, and he hangs there the extra second with the body control, and he'll either switch hands to just put the shot up where you are not now, or where your hand is not. It's like this totally singular skill. Very few players have it. That like to just have, I keep saying body control, but to just have the confidence that you can get the shot off even as you're sort of like on the down, like as you're falling down too, as you're moving, like you're past the peak of your shot, like you're falling down and you still have the spin. It's all just awesome.
For a split second while you were demonstrating there for the people on YouTube, I went Kyrie, like, oh my God, I got lost. I was like, but the impression was just so dynamic and close.
The doppelganger
stuff was real there. But and there was there's the Sabonis play where, in transition to your point, Kyrie didn't make the bucket, but Sabonis already had him cornered underneath the basket, and Kyrie Irving had 6 shifts of his body to almost get it to roll up over the rim.
Not only did he do that, he went up because they showed it. It was actually better from the above replay than when the actual shot went up. But he went up, turned his body like a full 90 degrees, and still put it up with his right hand over Sabonis and just missed, which should never happen for a guy that's a full foot taller than you. But he right, like it's a full foot taller and trying to block your shot, and to still get that ball up when your body's contorted in a way that just really shouldn't make it so it's even close, and it still came close to going in. And there's just so many examples of this.
There's going to be a lot more that we're going to be able to take away from this game, but let's not, I feel like we'd be doing ourselves and our fan base a disservice if we didn't at least just throw it out here. Kevin Durant, by the way.
Never heard of him.
What, some scrub? What was he, a minute filler? Just casually gives you a little 39, 8, and 7 over 41 minutes. And by the way, we've talked about this all year long. Even without Kyrie on the court, we've come in on post games and said, boy, man, you almost lose track of the fact what an impressive game Kevin Durant had without really even noticing it. You think those were impressive? Wait for these road games when you're so jacked up on all the fancy things that Kyrie is doing before your eyes that Kevin Durant is quietly putting up 39 points. I mean,
they're not mutually exclusive. Like it's a reason that his shot selection gets easier. You can see it all in their eyes when they get down 5. And by the way, I'm the biggest do not play Kevin Durant a lot of minutes guy, probably among the entire Nets fan base. But I was like, don't take him off. We got to win this thing. I was like, so but you could just see all of them. When they start rolling downhill in that third quarter, and they can start to smell blood in the water, and they kind of cut it to 5 at one point, and you could just see it. You just see those just like they're not losing at this point. When they cut it to 4 or 5 in the third, I might have been early fourth at that point, but there was just this turning point where once they start rolling downhill and the baskets are getting a little bit easier and easier, Indiana's not getting the same second chance points that they got, which were a massive problem in the first quarter or the first half. Again, the points in the paint were just, again, it's like still a problem for the Nets. But when it started to become just a little bit less of a problem, right? Like when there's just a little less room, they're just getting those 50-50 balls under the basket. They're boxing out. They're even getting fouls because they're boxing out a little bit more, which I'm totally fine with because at least the effort's there. But once that all starts to happen, you can just see it in everyone's eyes that they're just not going to lose. And for Kevin Durant, the situation becomes just a few less bringing help defenders on him. And those, like, when you do a little bit less of that, like stunting on him, he's just automatic in the mid range. Like we just see it again. This is all mid range for him, and he just can't miss because if you throw one-on-one defenders at him, especially a team like Indiana that just doesn't have like an apex sort of level defender, it's just going to be kind of elementary for him to just put up these kind of lines, and that's what you can't do when you have Kyrie on.
No, and again, said at the top, that floor spacing when Bembry ends up at the bucket, everybody has this single coverage on them. You have 3 superstars that are in single coverage. Now, it affords for Bembry to have a great level of success, but there's going to be all these scenarios where you end up having Kevin Durant or James Harden or Kyrie Irving getting the ISO matchup, getting that perfect game. Well, we get out the door here. Obviously, we're going to come back in next week and break down look at the schedule probably and talk about the next games. We're going to be able to see Kyrie Irving. But ultimately, I think the last piece I will just throw out there, because you just mentioned the mid-range game, just LaMarcus Aldridge, by the way, 6 of 8 in 16 minutes. His benefit, a guy that's been Mr. Automatic from the mid-range, continues to be able to do so. Everything gets easier. Patty Mills, last footnote, was plus 10 in 35 minutes, only hitting 2 threes was a +10. That's what role players get to slide back into. Really easy to find roles behind superstars.
Yeah, if you get to play all your minutes with those three guys, like you're probably going to be a plus player too. Like, I think most guys can do it. This is not a knock on Patty Mills, but this is just a testament to what this team now becomes when they're rolling on all cylinders, right? Like they are when you get to play with these guys, most combinations are going to work, and they're really going to work when you have a guy like Patty on the court with you. So it's all here for it. Yeah, I'm buzzing, man. This was such a cool win. I'm so glad they won. I was really, really going to feel very disappointed, I think, if they did not win this game. But the win going away and in the fashion they did with Kyrie back, I'm all here for it. We gonna have a guest on, I'm pretty sure, for Friday's episode. Really great, super smart person in the Nets world. So looking forward to that one, who should be on Friday. In the meantime, make sure you check out the Locked On Nets YouTube channel. I gotta say, anyone that's on YouTube, people put an absolute work in the comment section today for yesterday's episode. Oh my goodness. I kind of won one comment because I just actually threw it under a word count, 400 words. It's like a full article.
That's right. And by the way, that's the new minimum.
Yeah. Like you can get paid from certain content providers, and you can throw out 400 to 500 words just like without even thinking about it. So go over, check it out, what's going on for us over on the Locked On Nets YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, join the conversation. I will put the link in the show notes.
2+ podcasters right here, guys. That's why you're here for it. And by the way, Kyrie Irving, artist, painting with that brush. Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life. Poppy Picasso.
Oh, one of the all-time great oil. Was he an oil guy? I don't know. I'm not a big art guy. I never got it anyway. All right, one of the all-time great artists and poets. We will be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.